Also, the government sends directives to mainstream media, so they probably told them to keep quiet. We don't want the world knowing the dollar is about to become a lot less desirable. Shh.
The dollar. Looks like they're dumping it.
The world's largest oil producer, Saudi Arabia, is reportedly asking to join Brics.
Saudi Arabia is mulling over plans to sell some of its oil to China in China's domestic currency, the yuan.
The dollar is the cornerstone of the United States power. I think everyone understands very well that no matter how many dollars are printed, they are quickly dispersed all over the world.
The reports of my death are greatly exaggerated. Mark Twain's quote could be said on the demise of the dollar, which has often been predicted in the past couple of decades. However, 3 events recently took place that indicate that maybe, finally, the arc of history for the United States dollar is in decline. First, in recent days, social media has been talking about the end of a secret pact made by President Nixon with King Faisal of Saudi Arabia and how it was not renewed by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the devastating implications this has for the dollar. Second is Project Mbridge, and the third was the announcement by the Brics countries on developing an alternative non-dollar payment platform. So what was this secret agreement made between Nixon's administration and King Faisal bin Abdulaziz Al Saud just before his death? What is Project Mbridge, and why is it going to turn the world upside down as it currently stands? And how significant is Saudi Arabia joining Mbridge? Is the Brics alternative payment platform feasible? And finally, how has the Biden administration in particular precipitated the decline of the dollar? My aim is to reach 30,000 subscribers by the end of June. Each one of you can help me achieve this goal. Please subscribe, like and share the video if you enjoy the content. It will help me to bring a variety of new topics to you to discuss the different issues. Do share with me your comments and suggestions on other areas you are interested in as well. Nixon's secret pact with King Faisal bin Abdulaziz Al Saud was made in the aftermath of the 1973 Yom Kippur War, in which Egypt and Syria attacked Israel and got trounced as the United States sided with Israel. In response, Saudi Arabia announced an oil boycott on the United States, which had a massive impact alongside OPEC's increased prices. This changed and defined US-Saudi relations for the next 5 decades. On 8th of June 1974, the US and Saudi Arabia made 2 significant agreements that were at the time described as an unprecedented do-or-die plan for the United States. The plan was that the US would buy oil from Saudi Arabia, the oil would be sold in oil markets only in dollars, and the US in return would provide the kingdom military aid and equipment. The Saudis would plow billions of their petrodollar revenue back into treasuries, which helped finance America's spending. Information on the amount of treasuries bought by Saudi Arabia was to remain secret, which was how it stayed until 2017, 1 year after Bloomberg broke the story. This condition had at the time been specifically demanded by King Faisal, who wanted the treasury purchases to stay strictly secret, since after the Yom Kippur War, in which US helps Israel with the military weapons and other assistance, had left a lot of animosity towards the US in the Arab street, and they would have felt betrayed had they found out about this plan. The plan, which became part of 2 agreements on economic cooperation and military cooperation, was a win-win solution for both countries. As put by Nixon later, His Majesty and I have also reviewed the efforts by the United States to assist Saudi Arabia in maintaining its defense forces. Our 2 nations are totally dedicated to peace, but to achieve that goal in this area, Saudi Arabia must have a level of security that is consistent with its role as a leader in this part of the world. If Saudi Arabia is strong and secure, as it will be, we will enhance the prospects for peace and stability throughout the Middle East, and in turn throughout the world. This 1974 Nixon and King Faisal pact on what became the petro-oil dollar gave what we could sort of describe as a synthetic demand for the dollar, which has helped it to maintain its status for the past 50 years. This support was crucially important at that time, as Nixon had just taken the dollar off the gold standard in 1971, and the currency was being hit sharply, and inflation was soaring in the country. It's the US dollar's role as the petrodollar that has allowed it to keep running trillions of dollars of deficits and debt to be financed by foreigners. So the Saudis, in essence, helped the United States dollar to retain its position as the world's reserve currency and preserve its economic situation, which has helped the US to maintain its military hegemony for the subsequent 5 decades since then. As a Saudi, if you heard US congressmen talk about Saudi Arabia, you'd think that they're a thankless bunch of nincompoops. So recently in the media, there has been a lot of discussion that these agreements just expired because the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has not signed them. While that is not clear, and to a large extent, to me at least, it seems pure speculation. But another thing to keep in mind is that Saudi Arabia is currently in the middle of trying to negotiate for itself the deal of the century, as it has been described by the former President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. If those agreements have expired, then now is the perfect time when the Crown Prince has the Americans over a barrel to get them to agree to a security pact as per his own desire. But leaving aside the so-called expiry date of the Nixon-King Faisal Pact, in 2023, the Saudi Arabian Finance Minister Mohammed Al-Jadaan stunned journalists in Davos by saying that the country was open to taking other currencies for oil. They have signed a few contracts in non-oil trades with China in yuan through a currency swap between the Saudi riyal and Chinese yuan already. Now, coming to Project Mbridge, and while it sounds as if it has come out of some kind of James Bond movie, and no, it's not related to James Bond's M, although you never know. So the announcement that Saudi Arabia has officially joined the Bank for International Settlements, Project Mbridge, must have caused quite a stir in Washington. The project started in 2021 by the BIS on assessing the practicality of using central bank digital currencies for cross-border trades. The initiative also represents a step potentially towards de-dollarization in international trade. It is being done as a joint effort along with the central banks of China, Thailand, Hong Kong, and the UAE. Saudi Arabia, which was initially an observer during its development phase, has now decided to formally join as it gets ready for being used in the real world. The Central Bank of the UAE just completed the first cross-border transfer of 50 million digital dirhams, which is approximately $13.5 million, to China. And the transaction marked a significant milestone, leveraging blockchain technology to facilitate a seamless and rapid transfer, as it was done as part of the UAE's 50th central bank anniversary. Mbridge not only has the world's second largest economy, China, involved, but now with the addition of Saudi Arabia, also has a major G20 economy as well as the largest oil exporter in the world. This is why it's been hailed as a potentially displacing the dollar's dominance and moving towards a more multipolar financial world. It also has the potential to overthrow the Western-created SWIFT system, through which international payments are done from one bank in one country to another bank in another country. So if you are sitting in the United States and you need to send money to South Africa, for example, you would go into your local bank, although few of us even need to do that any longer, and you would give the name of the person, their account number, and the bank's SWIFT ID, and hey presto, your money safely reached where you wanted it to. So imagine, SWIFT does transactions worth over $150 trillion per year, and currently the euro and the US make up more than 7 out of those 10 SWIFT payments worldwide in 2024. China's Digital Currency Research Institute has estimated that an Mbridge transaction takes 7 seconds and cuts cross-border payment costs by 50%. This would have a major impact on global trade costs and the benefits for both companies and consumers, particularly those based in developing countries. By comparison, 89% of SWIFT cross-border payments are processed over its interbank messaging network and take at best at least 1 hour and at worst significantly longer, and they're much more expensive. Saudi Arabia's participation could increase the use of digital currencies in international trade, reducing the reliance on the US dollar for commodity settlements, especially in the oil market, which is one of the largest commodity markets. JP Morgan, the major American investment bank, has estimated that around 20% of oil sold in 2023 was already in non-dollar related currencies. This move could potentially impact the global dominance of the US dollar in international trade, particularly in the oil market. As the world's largest oil exporter, Saudi Arabia exports approximately 7 million barrels per day, worth around $223 billion in 2023. Saudi Arabia's involvement in Mbridge is a strategic step towards diversifying its economic and geopolitical alliances. Now, historically, Saudi Arabia has always been a pivotal ally of the Western countries, particularly the United States, for the reasons I mentioned earlier in the vlog. But recent years have seen a shift towards increasingly warm relations with China and the Brics countries. It also aligns with the country's strategic vision to modernize its financial infrastructure and diversify its economy's focus geographically as well as structurally. Now, by participating in these initiatives, Saudi Arabia is positioning itself as a central player in the evolving multipolar economic order. It enhances its international presence and offers new avenues for economic cooperation and investment, particularly with India and China, which are two of the world's largest markets. On a side note, the US House of Representatives passed a bill on the 23rd of May this year, banning the Federal Reserve from creating a digital dollar. Now, although it still needs to pass a vote in the Senate to become law, if this goes ahead, it would leave the United States behind in a crucially important emerging financial technology. And it's similar to when they were left behind in the EV car sector or the green technology. When they realized the importance of these, they punished China for having invested in them at the right time. It doesn't bode well, in my mind at least, for those participating in Mbridge if later the US deems it as threatening its position, which of course it ultimately will do so. Do give me your comments on this in the comments below about what you think about what the US House of Representatives is doing and whether you think it's in the right direction. Now, coming back to the broader trend of de-dollarization, there is also a desire in Brics nations, which Saudi Arabia just joined, to explore alternatives to the dollar in their trade transactions. There's an active discussion going on within the group on creating a new international reserve currency, potentially backed by gold. At the Brics foreign ministers meeting last week, they announced a massive trade agreement that would use national currencies for the settlement of respective trades with each other, bypassing the dollar. Now, this is probably going to be digital, but it was first discussed between them in August 2023 Brics meeting in Johannesburg in South Africa. The attempt will be expedited through the development of a Brics alternative payment platform for cross-border trades, which they've set up called Brics Pay Initiative. It's a project the group has been working on for the past couple of years. Now, this development could accelerate the decline of the dollar's dominance in global finance and global trade. Finally, while other countries are moving away from the dollar for different reasons, but this movement has been expedited and encouraged by the short-term, illogical, short-sighted actions, particularly in the last couple of years by the Biden administration itself. Runaway US spending and debt levels is putting a pressure on the dollar and reducing its value as a reserve currency, as does rising trade protectionism and threats to devalue the dollar. These are all factors that increase the risk of de-dollarization, as people no longer see the dollar as being a safe and stable currency, and they see diverse political factors driving this. The Chinese have started selling their treasuries, as have others, and even the amount of international reserves being kept in dollars has gone down year on year. But above all, what the Biden administration did by weaponizing the dollar has left all major countries scratching their heads. Russian sanctions, kicking Russia out of the SWIFT system and freezing its international foreign reserves that were worth at least around $280 billion.
Look at what is going on in the world. Even the United States allies are now downsizing their dollar reserves. Seeing this, everyone starts looking for ways to protect themselves. But the fact that the United States applies restrictive measures to certain certain countries, such as placing restrictions on transactions, freezing assets, etc., causes grave concern and sends a signal to the whole world.
The US has done itself no long-term favors through this strategy. And in the case of Russia, its trade, which was estimated from being conducted around 70% of dollars, is now 20% in dollars. It is doing a large percentage of its trades with both China and India in their respective currencies. All of these things have compounded the disaster on top of disaster. And the icing on the cake has been the latest suggestion that Russian reserves should be taken away and used for the reconstruction of Ukraine. It means the whole essence of what a world reserve currency stands for is under threat. The recent G7 meeting held in Italy, number one item for discussion was how to use the profit made on Russians' frozen assets, which were in their own custody, to pay towards the interest of Ukrainian loans that they're giving to them. So de-dollarization trend has started, whether it is a secular decline driven by new technology, for example, towards digital currencies, or kick-started through geopolitics as the United States tries to impose a new Cold War on a world that is not ready to accept exclusive American leadership as the way forward. President Biden epitomizes much of what is wrong with the United States right now. It is physically asserting itself when it no longer has the strength or the moral authority to do so. Thank you for giving me your time and reaching this far. I hope you will subscribe and like and share the video, and do suggest other topics you are interested in being covered.